And look who's coming up.
Alrighty, thank you so much. Just after 5 p.m. Eastern here on Ultimate Fantasy Sports Daily. What a terrific conversation with Eric Grossman of What's Your Call Sports. Just, getting that behind the scenes look at how you would handle home run number 61. You just really don't get that kind of insight every day. So that was a lot of fun, and I hope to have Eric back on the show many times. But right now, it is time for us to get you set for your fantasy football week number 4. Andy McNamara joining us. Of course, you can use the hashtag AskAndy on social media. You can get your questions in. And so my one question, our question of the day is, who has been the biggest disappointment through fantasy football this year? And I had to say, Josh Jacobs so far has been a big disappointment for fantasy and for the Raiders. The only good thing is he's the only one carrying the ball, so he's probably going to get to the end zone at some point. But it has been a bit of a disappointment, certainly from that standpoint. But I think there's a lot of other candidates out there that can be disappointments this year in fantasy, just like there's some breakout candidates as well, like there is every year.
Absolutely, Dean. And yeah, it comes down to me when it comes to disappointment. What are you categorizing it as? Is it where you drafted him? Let's say, because I've been getting a lot of messages at AndyMC81. What do I do with Austin Eckler? Well, the answer is you do nothing with Austin Eckler.
Right.
Stay put with Austin Eckler because you're not going to be able to get anything better than Austin Eckler. However, if you look at where he was drafted, probably drafted top 3. And so from that draft spot and that projection of you were hoping he'd be a game breaker, 20 plus fantasy points each game, he has underperformed. You go to a Josh Jacobs. Where are people taking Josh Jacobs? Probably second round. I'm still think that there is upside. And like you said, Dean, it's all about opportunity equals success in fantasy football. Who's going to get the most opportunity? It's going to be Josh Jacobs. So I still think that there's a world where he can be fantasy productive, but he's going to be your RB2, which is where I had him ranked anyway. So I still don't think it's that terrible. Where you look at, let's say, bigger disappointments are, let's say maybe like an Adam Thielen, who I had on the downturn anyway, but some people picked up maybe a little too high because of name recognition and that type of thing. So that's something you always have to track as well. But yeah, we're now into that almost quarter point of the season, entering week 4. So this is where, Dean, from now and the next 4 weeks after that, we should see anybody who's been able to shake off any rust from the early part of the season, whatever, and really see who's going to hit their stride.
Yeah, indeed. And guys that were hitting their stride in week 3, well, it's tough to argue against Lamar Jackson as the price tag just keeps going up for this guy for whenever he does sign. And Brandon Graham on the defensive end for Trout, and Legion taking top performer honors in week 3. And I mean, Lamar Jackson, this guy is adding money to his dollar or his contract every single time he goes out.
Oh, well, I kid with Ross, the GM of the Legion, Dean, because I hate the Ravens. I hate them with all my heart and soul. You see the brown stuff behind me. I hate the Ravens. I hate the Steelers. So to see Lamar Jackson, to have to put that out there and say, hey, to see that purple just drives me nuts. But you can't question the week that he had. And really, this whole Ravens team, fantasy-wise, Dean, when you look at it, though, it continues to neuter any fantasy value, any dependable fantasy value to any running back, whether it's our NFT UFFS signed athlete, Justice Hill, whether it's J.K. Dobbins, whether it's Bust the Gus comes back, whatever it might be. There is always an issue because Lamar Jackson is the one who's running the ball. You see it right there, 107 rushing yards. Well, no other running back's going for over 100 yards likely there either.
Yeah, listen, it's exciting football. I love watching it, but you're right. If you're in fantasy football, there's certain running backs to stay away from. And then, when you look long term, wherever Lamar Jackson goes, that's also going to impact that value.
Absolutely. It's all about the surrounding pieces, right? It's all about the surrounding pieces and what the quarterback does. So, for example, you see somebody like a Derek Carr who does have some high-end QB2 value. He, to me, has been always somebody that has been able to make the pieces around him fantasy relevant while not being fantasy relevant himself. Then you look at guys like Lamar Jackson who kind of suck up all the fantasy value for themselves. Then there's an in-between guy who I've been big on Dean since before the draft, before he was drafted, and through his first couple of years now in the NFL, is Jalen Hurts of the Philadelphia Eagles. You see Brandon Graham right there. His counterpart on the other side of the ball, of the line, Jalen Hurts, because he's using his legs. He's becoming very last year he was fantasy gold. This year he's continuing to be, but he's also making those receivers, those options around him. And that's where the real detail is for Jalen Hurts. A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, Dallas Goedert, right? Even the backfield, Miles Sanders, and which I'm pretty surprised that Miles Sanders has been a quality RB2.
I agree with you. For some reason, your screen is frozen. I don't know why. Why don't you log out,
That's weird.
log back in really quickly, and we'll get you unstuck. And Jalen Hurts, you're absolutely right. My bold prediction last week was Jalen Hurts was going to throw 3 passing touchdowns because he had been running in all the touchdowns. He ended up doing that and throwing for the 3 touchdowns. And that's especially huge in my touchdown-only league. That's where I have Josh Jacobs. Like, Josh Jacobs is getting the ball a lot. He's just not getting to the end zone. That's where the disappointment is. And then the expectation of Jalen Hurts is, yeah, he's going to run the ball, he's going to run the ball, he's going to run the ball. Well, then he starts throwing the ball, and he starts becoming, you know, we're 3 weeks in, so it's a little premature, but you start thinking, this guy's going to be hovering around QB5 all year if this keeps up. Top 5.
Definitely. Absolutely. And he was a stud. Last year, he was a top 12 guy. Somebody last year I picked up in some of my redraft leagues where I had Dak Prescott and Jalen Hurts. Boy, I wish I took that strategy this year instead of going Dak Prescott. Trey Lance has not aged well, Dean, because of the injuries. Oof.
Yes.
Not good.
Yes. No.
Not good. But that same type of idea to see, okay, you got the legs of a young quarterback. Can his arm develop? We're seeing with Jalen Hurts, it certainly is.
Indeed, yeah. Okay, so I'm just trying to think. I've got my start sits here. So let's get to our start sits for tonight's game. And
Yes.
you can kind of check out my homework here and tell me what you think of this sort of lineup tonight going in as far as point projections from Fantasy Pros.
So let's see. So for Tua, the latest report looks like he will play. He's really banged up. So I wonder if we're going to see him limited, if there's a possibility he could be knocked out and Teddy Bridgewater come in. Now, with that being said, this is one of those instances where it's really good that the Dolphins have a quality backup quarterback. Because to me, while Tua has been balling out this year, and credit to him, to me, if you can insert Teddy Bridgewater, who did quite well in New Orleans, and goes back to my point of being the quarterback doesn't have to be fantasy relevant themselves, but they can make the pieces around them fantasy relevant. Teddy Bridgewater can do that. So I don't think, to me, I'm not going to start Tua, but it does not scare me to play any of the other Miami starters because of that fact that you have Teddy Bridgewater. So you have Chase Edmonds, absolutely. Raheem Mostert, yes. It's very interesting. And I wonder for DFS plays, Dean, if people might want to be a little bold, a little dangerous, if you will, and maybe stack both Miami running backs. The reason being their snap count and their touches are almost evenly split. The difference last week was Edmonds got into the end zone. So you could see a variety of, if it's split, does Mostert get into the end zone? Does Edmonds do both? So there might be a world, if you want to do a little contrarian, that you can play both guys. So I like that. Tyreek Hill, yes. Jalen Waddle, banged up as well, but looks like he will play. I think you'd probably have to start him because you probably don't have a better option. And Mike Gesicki, you know what? Track up until kickoff. If there's anything weird that happens with Jalen Waddle and he's not going to play or something, put Mike Gesicki in. If he's playing, though, for sure, and it looks like, there's no red flags, then I'm with you on the sit Gesicki part. But if one of those guys misses, Gesicki's a good go-to. That just hasn't been able to get the ball yet.
That's it. That's really, really That's quite interesting, and I like, the Tua situation. If you have a good option as a backup, sure, but I wonder, what do you get to? Do you is if you have Joe Flacco as your backup, would you start Tua, or is Joe Flacco putting up enough points with the Jets? I mean, I wonder, you can only sit Tua if you have someone better, right? And if you have somebody better, then you definitely go that route. But at what point do you get to where you're like, okay, Tua injured is still better than this guy?
Right, and we have to figure as well, and I think the fantasy point projection 17.5 is probably typically the kind of standard for what you're looking for Tua, between 15 and 17. That's kind of like a Jimmy Garoppolo type, lower than a Derek Carr, for example, typically this season. So don't get hung up as well when people look at the fantasy point per game average. Make sure you're looking at each game. Game 1 against New England, 14.8. Game 2, 43.86, which was that amazing game versus Baltimore. Then he got banged up and knocked out, so not a fair projection out of Buffalo. This game I like, because if Tua can stay in the ball game, you are going to have to throw the football, because Cincinnati throws the football and throws it some more, and then they're going to keep throwing. So we look at the Bengals. Joe Burrow, I don't care if the Bengals are 0-3, 3-0, whatever. Joe Burrow's throwing the football. He's a must start.
100%. Yeah, it's and last week, much better protection for Joe Burrow as well. So maybe things are getting better. Joe Mixon, I think it's that's probably a no-brainer there. And then the receivers. What do you think about Chase, Higgins, and Hayden Hurst being a sit?
Well, it's good. I like where you were at with Mixon and Sam Pirine. And the reason you have Pirine in there is because he was a speculative hot waiver ad this week.
Yeah.
Because Mixon was injured in last week's game. Now, he's been fully cleared.
Yeah.
Good to go. Check marks all over the place. So Pirine is a definite sit. If you did pick him up on waivers, I would try to keep him. That stash type, like a Khalil Herbert in Chicago, who's probably going to play this week instead of Dave Montgomery. A Madison, who might get some touches because Dalvin Cook isn't 100%, although it looks like he's trending in that direction for that London game this Sunday. So you look at Mixon to start. The thing is, you got to play the receivers, because it's like I said, they throw all the time. You can start Jamar Chase, T. Higgins. I'll throw Tyler Boyd in there too, Dean. Heck.
Okay.
Make it a triple stack. Make it a triple decker. Put some meat on that. Let's go. Put some pickles and onions on it too. Those three guys can just ball out. Now, the guy who gets hurt with that is Hayden Hurst. That's the problem. And I've always liked his talent, the tight end. Out of Atlanta, he just never has been able to get a consistent play. He's talented, he's athletic, but he's just not getting it. It would take an injury to one of those receivers for him to get a bump up. So with your list right there, I'm with you on all of it on the Bengals side.
All right, so Ask Andy, we threw it out on social media. Rob has one, contemplating dropping Ramondre Stevenson to add Khalil Herbert, who you just mentioned, if Montgomery is to miss any significant time. Thoughts? Ask Andy. So what do you think of Rob's question?
Yeah, 100%. And the thing is, too, with Ramondre Stevenson, had a great game. Damian Harris also hit into double-digit fantasy points. The problem with New England is it's that dreaded committee word, Dean. A committee word. Because it could be this week, it could be Stevenson could be the guy, Harris could be the guy, both could be the guy, or Belichick could get weird with his whatever offensive coordinator. And we've seen him before bring up some rando to then go off or not throw the ball up. It could be all over the place. Mac Jones banged up. I really don't want to be touching that New England offense if I don't have to till I see what this looks like with that Mac Jones injury. So Khalil Herbert for sure. If Montgomery sits, because we saw Herbert last year, and this is the example. Sometimes you don't have the luxury of knowing what a guy can do when he gets the chance. Herbert got the chance last year. That dude was at high-end RB2 when he was in there. He's a must-play, not even a flex team, RB2 level as a replacement. So if track the health of Montgomery. If he's out, you put Herbert in. I picked him up a couple of my leagues too, and I'm going that direction.
All right, this is an interesting one. This comes back to what we just actually talked about. Scotty says, start Tua or Rodgers, #AskAndy. And, if you have Aaron Rodgers and you're contemplating a banged up Tua, that's where you say, okay, I'll wait and I'll start Rodgers. Even though, I think there was a great stat that you had Mahomes, Allen, Rodgers, and Brady all last week held to 19 points or lower. They still put up fantasy points, obviously. So that's a situation where your backup is fine. So you would wait, in my opinion, if Tua is as banged up as we think and not going to be able to dole it out, that's a guy you wait on and you start that guy. But if it's, Joe Flacco or whatever it might be, you're going with Tua. But in that sense, I think you can answer the question, but my response would be, don't start Tua.
Yeah, I'm going to wager and take the chance on the future Hall of Famer Aaron Rodgers. The season to start, not good, fantasy-wise or real-life-wise, Dean, because you have Game 1, 4.7 fantasy points. Game 2, 16.36. Game 3, 17.1. Not Aaron Rodgers types of numbers. We want 25 to 30 fantasy points. We want 400 yards, 4 touchdown games. Hasn't happened yet. I don't think it's necessarily going to happen against that New England defense either. But to your point, yes, you have a healthy Aaron Rodgers. Romeo Doubs makes a nice stack, although I like the rookie and the combo with Rodgers. I would try to avoid it this week just because I think they'll really try to hanker down on Romeo Doubs. But overall, that stack is really nice. But yeah, you got to go with Aaron Rodgers. And same if you got like Tom Brady. Go with the talent, go with what's there, and hope that this is just those first 3 weeks. They're shaking off the offseason rust, and they'll get back to business.
All right, here's a Ask Andy trade from VJ Investing. So he's investing in fantasy. Wanted to get your thoughts on this trade offer, Andy, being offered Eckler for CeeDee Lamb and Everett. So this goes back to people asking about Austin Eckler again, right? Like if you can get him in a trade, you probably should. Depending on, obviously, at the expense and the price, because I think his stock is probably going to be going up. If people are selling low, it's like Josh Jacobs. I'm not selling low on him right now because he's the guy getting the ball. He's going to get into the end zone. So your thoughts on that trade?
So the tweeter would be the one giving away Austin Eckler?
No, he's getting Eckler for CeeDee Lamb and Everett.
Oh, so he's getting Eckler and giving away CeeDee Lamb and Everett? Hells yes.
Yes. Yeah,
right now, like no take-backs. Press the button.
Yes.
No take-backs. Say no take-backs, no reviews. Here's the reason why, Dean. Here's the reason why. Despite we believe in the talent of Austin Eckler, friend of UFFS, Madison Vegas and all that, cool dude, very nice man. Where you drafted him, again, the expectations have not lived up. However, look at the numbers here. PPR specifically, which is where his real value is. 11.2 points, 18.4, 13.3. Not where you want them in the 20s, but certainly more than serviceable, right? Yep. The numbers are okay. They're fine. They're okay.
And only going to get better.
The reason as well. Yeah, exactly. And they can get better, right? And you look at the match. And plus, Houston this week, dream matchup. This is a get-right week for everybody in L.A. with the Chargers, I think. Here's the other reason, though. It is much, much more difficult to get a true RB1 than it is to get a starting wide receiver. Dean, every week I can get you a guy off of waivers that can get you 10 fantasy points every week. So for CeeDee Lamb, while I love the talent, super talented, you're still limited with Cooper Rush, who has performed above what we've expected with Dak Prescott going out. So you still have Cooper Rush. Dak Prescott should be coming back soon, but you have him. They're leaning on the run game smartly. And Gerald Everett, I'm not buying. I don't believe in him as a tight end talent at all. So I think you get that deal. You get Austin Eckler. It is much easier to get a more upper tier wide receiver fantasy help than it is for a running back.
Beautiful. 11 a.m. Eastern on Sunday, Ultimate Fantasy Football. It's that very important time where people, in the league, what's his name would call it, doing his little tinkering, lineup tinkering. So it's a really important time. You'll be on right here on Twitch, taking people's questions, helping people get their lineups set, and discussing it with amazing guests. Absolutely. And you know what? I got one more Ask Andy question that just came in on Twitter.
Oh, okay, good.
Go for it.
And because of relation to tonight's game and similar. So this is from Paul Souza 80. Says Tua tonight versus Cincy or Tannehill versus Indy, leaning to Tua. This is interesting.
I think I'd go Tannehill.
Well, it's kind of that tweener thing because it's the backup option. Okay, well, Aaron Rodgers was a bit of an easier ask. or are we believing in Tannehill? And while people have been dumping on the Titans, and rightfully so, the fantasy numbers for Tannehill have not been that bad.
Yeah.
Now, it's against Indy, tough defense, but I'm with you. I'm leaning for Tannehill against Indy because Thursday nights can be weird. They might want to run the ball more. One wrong hit, and Tua has been injury prone.
Short week, yeah.
Short week, right? I would go with Tannehill for sure on this one.
Yeah, then it's a judgment call, but I'll go with the guy who I think is going to finish the game more likely. And I'm not. I have questions about Tua finishing the game tonight. So,
absolutely, and it's the short week, etc. Coming off of an injury, you have your best bud Jalen Waddle. He's injured too with Tua. Yeah. So, I think you go there, you go with Tannehill, and you rock and roll. And yeah, I'll be answering questions. Hashtag Ask Andy on Twitter at AndyMC81 all week on the show, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern on Sundays. We'll get everybody ready for week 4 and see what happens.
I love it, man. Thanks so much, as always, for joining me. Can't wait to see it on Sunday, buddy.
All right, man. Talk to you later.
Take care. There's Andy McNamara. Check him out Sunday mornings, 11 a.m. right here on twitch.tv/Ultimate Fantasy Sports. Ask Andy. Get your fantasy lineups ready.